We had a bunch of really good games into the early evening, and then, of course, the latter half of the day as we were about ready to hit record here. But the Utah-USC game is super interesting for a variety of different reasons. Utah has had the formula for beating USC. It just feels like they've had that formula. And the question coming into this one was, of course, they don't really play offense. They don't really play offense.
Yeah,
And
they showed a spark last week, but it was against Cal, so you didn't know what to believe.
we didn't know what to believe. And what we debated on the preview show was, does that matter? Does that matter? And you settled on the fact that, well, they'll find it. They'll figure a way to do it because this is a USC defense that doesn't really stop anybody. And I said, well, I just think USC is too good. I think USC has too much firepower, too many ways to win. As expected, I was wrong. I've been wrong all year.
I tell you to trust me with the West Coast tie. I
Oh,
really
you
do.
lied to me before we picked this game. You said, I think I'm going USC. And I'm like, Dan knows what he's talking about. I built a whole thesis around USC.
But I took Utah on the show. You had the opportunity.
No.
Pivot with me.
This was like 48 hours after you told me which direction you were going.
I know.
You said you sat in a meditation chamber. You threw me a curve. You did it on purpose.
I did.
I still love you. It's fine.
Yeah.
It's fine. But Utah wins 34-32, a 38-yard field goal at the gun, a big clutch run by Bryson Barnes at the very end of this game to get well within field goal range and set up that game-winning kick. It's telling that Utah I would call Bryson Barnes, who had a pretty good game.
He had a full-on good game.
Good game. I would still call him a part-time backup because I don't know if they're fully committed to him. They like a little bit of Nate Johnson. Sometimes they like Bryson Barnes. Sometimes they don't. Maybe they'll like him more after this showing. But the point stands that basically a part-time backup helped Utah, which has not played offense all year, outgain USC.
Yeah.
And all of the hype surrounding this offense and Caleb Williams and all the firepower and Lincoln Riley and, oh my God, the offense. And again, it happens against Utah, Dan, once again.
Bryson Barnes is a quintessential. 14 months ago, he was running a PetSmart. And like he's the quintessential because Cam Rising has been there for so long, being so good for so long. And Bryson Barnes has struggled this year, right? They've platooned him. Platooned? What word am I looking for? Platooned. I'm all over the place. There's my baseball reference. Plateaued him. With Nate Johnson, who certainly seemed to be more of a running option.
Yeah.
And then they sort of turned to, as we all predicted, a strong safety to help overhaul their offense away from looking like, Mountain Time Zone Iowa. And it worked against Cal. They jump out to, it's a 14-all game after like no time. USC's making hay and executing huge plays. Utah's marching downfield, running the ball downfield, so it's Sione Vaki, the sort of all-purpose weapon, plays safety, lines up in the backfield, was great catching the ball out of the backfield.
You love this guy. You're going to get a fat head
unbelievable
down there of Sione Vaki.
Yeah. Do they still make those? Is that a thing still?
I don't know.
Not a sponsor. Hopefully still exists.
Yeah.
But he was terrific for them. The offensive line was very good. And USC just seems to find themselves playing in these games where Caleb Williams, he had an incredible touchdown throw where it looked like he overthrew the receiver by 13 yards, but he put enough loft on it that I forget if it was I think it was Taj Washington. Correct me if I'm wrong here. But had an incredible touchdown throw, made incredible plays with his arm and his legs, threw a bad pick. And it was just sort of USC fading. I think they punted 4 out of the 5 drives after it was 14-all, and they scored those 2 touchdowns. They're committing a bunch of penalties up front. You get the brutal, what looked to be a good roughing the passer call against Bear Alexander turned out to be a targeting call, which extended a late drive and helped to set Utah up for the game-winning field goal. And you're absolutely right. Like Utah has had USC's number sort of, but it was with these like big tight ends who USC couldn't stop. Now it's just like a smallish safety who they're lining up creatively, who can plant his foot in the ground and go for 27 at any given moment. Yeah. And so Utah's a super well-coached team. They had all their timeouts at the end of the game. USC seemed to set themselves up in a good place by a long punt return from Zachariah Branch. Like they have these playmakers, but they just can't string together positivity in a way that a more balanced team can. The defense can't get off the field. The defense can't get after the quarterback at all anymore. They got to the quarterbacks. They played in September. Quarterback Sam Hartman was very clean against USC, as you remember. And Bryson Barnes, for the most part, was kept pretty clean in a lot of big moments and ran, it was third or fourth down and long. He had that long run down the sideline, almost untouched for the majority of it. Like, it's just a USC team that is a very fun, entertaining half team, and a Utah team that is better coached and better built to close out games because they can play defense and play some gutty offense when needed. So a great entertaining game, but I think pretty instructive about where USC is and is probably heading.
Yeah, and the Utah story continues to get more interesting. Kyle Whittingham, we're told just tonight,
Yeah.
announced that Cam Rising out for the season, Dan.
Oh, that's official. Okay. I
So
figured at this point, why would he come back now? Yeah.
right. It figures to be Bryson Barnes and Nate Johnson the rest of the way. There is a little bit of the way that Kyle Whittingham has structured this team that they're kind of living in a post-quarterback world.
Yeah.
They play solid defense. They're a physical team. They're continually underrated, and yet they
USC
continually
ran
get
on
the
him
job
pretty
done.
well, though. To be honest,
They
USC,
did.
like, Utah's been playing some pretty disappointing offenses. They played Oregon State and lost to Oregon State, but USC did a really nice job game planning for this Utah team. It faded and Utah made nice adjustments, but USC came out really nicely against this Ute team. But alas.
Alas, here we go. As Jason Benetti pointed out on the broadcast, no two-loss team has ever made the playoff. This was USC's first conference loss. I don't think we had any aspirations that this was a playoff team after what we saw against Notre Dame, and even in some of the games building up to this one. But it's official now. Not going to the playoff.